Coming up on this episode, the NBA schedule has officially been released, so I'll tell you everything you need to know from a Warriors perspective, including a closer look at the opening 10 games and what kind of expectations we should hold for Golden State through the first stretch of the season. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Just a quick episode going through the NBA schedule from a Warriors perspective. I always find it very interesting how there's all this fuss made about the NBA schedule. It's unveiling on NBA Today. I get it to a degree, don't get me wrong. I got up at 5 a.m. to cover it for BlueManHoop.com, but I just don't really care. 82 games is a huge sample size where the scheduling just doesn't really come into it for me. Now, yes, you're going to look at specific segments or periods of the season where, you might have an easier run or a harder run. You've got homestands, road trips, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, you play 41 games at home, you play 41 games away. At no point do I ever look back at a season and think, you know what, we got absolutely screwed by the schedule, or that team got such an easy run, or they got screwed by the schedule. It just doesn't come into it for me. And so when this is all unveiled, it just is what it is, in my opinion. And there can't be any, yes, there might be an imbalance between the West and the East in terms of, going into next season. There's a lot of teams, 4 or 5 teams in the East who may look to tank, maybe only 1 or 2 in the West. And therefore that gives the East teams an advantage. Yeah, sure. But then the East doesn't meet the West till the finals anyway. So that doesn't really make a difference to me. It just is what it is at the end of the day. And maybe that's coming from an Australian perspective where, as an AFL fan, there's probably more controversy, I think, on the AFL fixture and scheduling, where we have an 18-team competition and 23 rounds of football, or 23 games that each team plays. So therefore, you play every team once, and then you play an additional 6 teams a second time. And then the controversy on, who plays who in those other 6 games can come into it a little bit, and can, in some ways, determine, who makes finals and whatever else. It's just not the case in the NBA. And so I don't, again, at no point do I look back at a season and think, wow, the schedule really impacted what this team was able to do this season. It just doesn't play any part for me. But that doesn't mean we won't talk about it on this episode. So things we already knew heading into this unveiling earlier today. Clay's return on November 12 coincides with the first NBA Cup game. So that will obviously be at Chase Center, an emotionally charged game that I already spoke about on last episode. They've also got other NBA Cup games against the Grizzlies on November 15, and then at New Orleans on November 22, and at Denver on December 3. Very, very tough NBA Cup group. We knew that. We knew the schedule a couple of days ago. And then, of course, Christmas Day v. the Lakers was announced, I think, last week as well. The Warriors not on the opening night slate. Instead, they will head to Portland to open their season on October 23. Yes, I think. But they do get the Christmas Day game against the Lakers, so that will be one to watch out for, no doubt. All right, so in terms of the fresh stuff that we see from the schedule, road-heavy start and close to the season. So the Warriors start on the road against Portland and Utah, their first 2 games, and 7 of their first 10 on the road, which culminates in very, very challenging road games against Boston, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City. That will certainly provide an early litmus test, but I will get into the opening 10 games soon in a minute. We've also got a trio, and to close the season, I should mention, 8 of the last 12 games on the road as well. So Golden State probably wanting to put themselves in a reasonable position in terms of trying to claim a playoff spot with 12 to 15 games remaining, because it may be hard to rely upon a strong close to the season when you've got 8 of the last 12 on the road. Trio of long homestands kind of mid-season, where between December 28 and March 20, the Warriors have 3 different homestands consisting of 6, 6, and 7 games, respectively. I think this is a really crucial part of the season for mine, because I think it's come out that they've got the 4th hardest strength of schedule through the first 2 months, so slightly challenging there. Obviously, the 8 of the last 12 on the road to finish the season. this is going to be the important part of the season. Mid-season where, I mean, teams can get a little bit tired. The season can kind of become laborious to a degree. I think if you look back at last season, the Warriors lost their positioning and ultimately their inability to make the playoffs stemmed from probably the period between Christmas Day against the Nuggets, where they could have won that game. They were in the contest, ended up losing. Between December 25 and January 27, they had 14 games between that span. They went 4-10. And if you look back at that, I think they were 15-14, hovering about 500 entering that Christmas Day game. All of a sudden, they're 19-24 after January 27. So from that point, 43 games through the season, they're really on the back foot. They close the season in spectacular fashion, one of the best teams in the league over the last 39 games, and yet it's still not enough to get a playoff spot. They finish 10th, get eliminated straight away in the play-in tournament by the Kings. So I do really think like those homestands, the Warriors have to take advantage of that, and they didn't. They weren't able to take advantage of their home games last season. They finished 21-21 on the road. I think it was 21-21, something along those lines. I think they were 26-15 on the road. So they were really good on the road, really poor at home, which was a complete reversal from the previous season where it was quite a storyline going throughout the season, how bad they were on the road and how good they were at home. I think they were 11-30 on the road in that 2022-23 season. But no doubt it will be important to take advantage of those long homestands, just rack up wins back-to-back throughout the middle of the season to try and get themselves into a strong spot because, again, you don't necessarily want to be relying on late season runs as they did last season where you're behind the 8 ball and, yes, they closed the season very strongly but couldn't make up for it. And at that point, you're relying on other teams as well to kind of fall down around you, which just didn't happen in the Western Conference last season. And you probably, given the competitive nature of the conference again, you probably won't be able to rely upon that again next season either. And then obviously the 8 of the last 12 on the road, as we keep mentioning. 14 back-to-backs for the Warriors, which is okay. There's other teams with 15. I think the Clippers have 16 or something like that. They're 14's fine. It's kind of average. Again, there's no need to be complaining about that at all or look back on the season depending on what the Warriors do and complain about that. It just is what it is. That's the schedule. It's pretty average for most teams. So the Warriors, I think their first one is actually a home back-to-back against the Pelicans, both games against Pelicans on October 29 and 30. 24 nationally televised games, an additional 12 on NBA TV. That ranks second. That 36 ranks second behind the Lakers, who have 39. Just continues to show how much the league, I think, still relies or wants to rely on Steph and LeBron. And Minnesota are the team that's seen a big jump in nationally televised games. They are making a real big push here, I think, to get Anthony Edwards as the next face of the league, really, because right now it's still Steph and LeBron. It just is. That's who fans want to watch. They are the faces of the league. They are the two preeminent superstars in the league still. That was just shown on the Olympic roster, where you had a star-studded list of players, star-studded list of young players as well. We're talking about, Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker's still relatively young, all these guys. And yet, who are the main three guys on the team? It's 39-year-old LeBron, it's 36-year-old Steph, it's 35-year-old KD. They're the guys, right? They are the guys that still lead the way in so many areas, not just in terms of what we saw in the Olympics, but in terms of who fans want to see and carrying the league from a media perspective in terms of the Lakers getting 39 nationally televised games, if you include NBA TV, and the Warriors getting 36. Who's up next? I think if they're really pushing Ants at the moment, I think Wemby's got to be the other one, but I'm interested to see how that happens given he's like an international player. He's French. Does the US viewing lean into him as much as what they may if he was a homegrown US player? I don't know. I don't know probably enough being an Australian about that. But if I was looking at the league, I think certainly Wemby is the player that I'd be certainly, if I was a league, I'd be pushing to try and get at the forefront of minds, in front of eyes, as much as I possibly could, even just heading into year two. And I think last season there's a bit of an issue with, I suppose, the Spurs just being bad and not wanting to put a bad team on national television just because they've got a great young exciting player. I don't think that'll be a problem next season. I think the Spurs will be competitive enough. They could really push for a playing spot, I think, next season. And if that's the case, then I think, I'm not even sure how many nationally televised games they have, but I'd be pushing for as much as possible if you're looking to try and find the next face of the league beyond Steph and LeBron. All right, let me go into the first 10 games here, because there is going to be a lot of pressure on the Warriors entering next season at the start, and they are going to want to get off to a good start, not only to set up their season, obviously, but to kind of push back against some of the angst surrounding the fan base at the moment, where so many fans are looking at the fact that the Warriors have been unable to land a second star this offseason, failed pursuits of Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, and really look at this team and think, okay, where are we going? We've got a 36-year-old Stephen Curry. Why are we not necessarily prioritizing that? Rather, we want to keep all our young prospects, Pods and Kuminga, particularly future draft assets. They were clearly willing to give up in deals, in a deal for Mark, and they were willing to go all in terms of the draft picks. But what have these young guys got? And if Golden State fail to get off to a good start, then the pressure is only going to rise. The anxiety among the fan base is only going to rise with the expectations that come with having Steph Curry on your roster. So it's going to be really fascinating first 10 games. And I think when you look at it, the first thing that jumps out is, okay, 7 of the first 10 on the road. That's a bit of a concern. Could lead to a bit of a pessimistic outlook, throughout the first portion of the season. But when you actually dive into who they're playing in those road games and the first 10, 12 overall, I think there's actually a lot of hope that the Warriors can get off to a reasonable start here. So if we go through the games individually, clearly the first two, at Portland, at Utah, they've just got to be wins. They have got to be wins. It's going to be interesting, very interesting playing the Jazz in the second game, getting to go against Lauri Markkanen in what is really a could-have-been moment, I suppose, coming up against him. And I'm sure he's going to be motivated to play well. Obviously, it's early in the season, but the fact that the Warriors try to trade for him, it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic between both teams, Markkanen and how he performs, Pods, how he performs. There's going to be pressure on him, obviously, throughout the whole season, but especially, coming up against the Jazz in game 2, where he goes kind of directly against Markkanen, and you don't want to push that storyline too much, but the fact of the matter is that the Warriors were unwilling to give up Brandon Podziemski in a deal for Lauri Markkanen. That's what it is. So it'll be fascinating to see how that pans out. But they've just got to be 2 wins, right? Portland and Utah tipped by many people to finish 14th and 15th in the Western Conference next season. There's just no excuses. No excuses not to win both those games. And then you've kind of got this 3-game homestand that starts with the back-to-back against the Pelicans in those 2 games, and then they host the Clippers as well. They need to win at least 2 of those. Like, individually, those games could all could go either way. There's no doubt about that. I think the Pelicans are more than capable, and the Clippers, even though they've lost Paul George, are probably capable of beating the Warriors on their home floor as well. But I think in the 3-game totality, I think the Warriors should be hoping to win at least 2, if not all of those games. I am interested to see what the Pelicans look like. Like, their roster at the moment, they just don't have a center. So I'm interested to see what happens there. Are they going to make another move before the start of the season? Time will tell. But also, it might be a good time to get them as they kind of incorporate DeJounte Murray. That's the thing, I suppose, about the Warriors, is that they're not adding any huge pieces, and therefore the chemistry should still be there that they built last season. Now, sure, you lose a key piece in Clay, there's no doubt about that, but the same guys the same main guys are still the main guys, right? The starting lineup, if it's Steph, Pods, Wiggins, Kuminga, Draymond, whatever it is, like those 5 guys were all on the team last season. As the Pelicans, they'll be introducing DeJounte Murray. That's a big piece to try and bring into your team, and maybe it's a good time to get them in the 3rd and 4th game of the season, where the chemistry may not have necessarily developed or be built at that point, and therefore the Warriors could take advantage of that. But we'll wait and see. But I think those 3 games you'd expect at least 2 victories, if not all 3. And then you head on the road. So your road to the Rockets, so you go to Houston, Washington, Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. Houston will be a challenge, and they should be again. Should be improved again next season. But the Warriors have also won 13 straight regular season games against them. That should provide them a lot of confidence. Steph will certainly go in. Draymond will certainly go in with a lot of confidence. So that's a game that is maybe 50-50, but the recent record of 13 straight regular season wins should suggest that they win that game. And then Washington, that's just like those 3, Portland, Utah, Washington. Yes, they're all on the road. They've just got to be 3 wins. They just have to be. And I mean, if we lose one of those games, then that's a huge concern. And then you finish with Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. Very, very tough, but also provides an early litmus test for where the Warriors are at, because you'd think Celtics probably be top of the East next season. Thunder likely to be top of the West in many experts' view. Cavs probably going to be a top 4 or 5 seed in the East. So it does provide an early litmus test of where the Warriors are going to be. Now, they don't have to win all those games, but I think they need to steal at least one. They're going to go in as, you'd imagine they'd go in as underdogs in all 3 of those games. They're going to have to win at least one, I think. And so long as they can prove competitive enough in the other 2, like you don't want any blowout losses. You want to be able to see that you can be a competitive team against the best in the league. And we saw that throughout, stages of last season. They had a great victory over the Celtics at Chase Center. They had a great early season victory on that Steph Curry buzzer-beating layup in Oklahoma City. So it's a wait and see job on those 3 games. And again, they'll probably go in as underdogs in all 3, but it's not just about the winning, it's about proving competitive. And again, it's an early litmus test coming up against especially the Celtics and the Thunder, who could be the 2 best teams in the league throughout next regular season. So I think overall, you should be guaranteed 3 wins, Portland, Utah, Washington. And then in the remaining 7, I think you're going to be hoping for 4. You're going to be trying to get 4 wins there in those 2 games against the Pelicans, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Thunder. I think your best chances are probably in that 3-game homestand, obviously, and then against the Rockets. If you can win 3 of those 4 games and then win one of the 3 against the Celtics, Cavs, and Thunder, all of a sudden that's 4 out of that 7. You get 3 other victories. You start the season 7-3 through 10 games. That's got to be the aim. That has to be the aim. And if they're less than that, that's probably a disappointment. Anything more than that is a great result and is certainly going to open some optimism as to what they could do over the remainder of the season. But it's got to be 7-3 at a minimum. It really does. And again, anything less than that, and we're going to have some concerns and issues. The pressure is going to rise. Now, yes, if they're 6-4 and still above 500, then maybe they'll get away with it, and you can at least you can look at that and say, well, we're above 500. But I think real fans will acknowledge that this schedule, even though it's 7 of 10 games on the road, does provide an opportunity for them to be better than just 500, to be 7-3 through the 10 games. As I say, anything less than that, there's going to be some pressure. There's going to be some pressure, I think. So looking forward to the NBA season. Obviously, we've still got a while. It's a bit disappointing now. We've got to the doldrums of the off season where all the transactional stuff, trades, free agency is quieting down. We had the Olympics to get us through for a couple of weeks there, which is exciting, but now that's finished. And we've got 2 months and 7 days till to the opener. Of course, the Celtics will host the Knicks in their season opener for ring night, And then the Timberwolves visit the Lakers as well. And then the next night, we've obviously got the Warriors going to Portland. So looking forward to it. Hopefully the next couple of months can come quickly. I'll certainly have plenty more episodes talking about what the Warriors could do next season, their prediction, individual player kind of stuff. And of course, potential trades, other moves they could make over the remainder of the offseason as well. But if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. And other than that, guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.